Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, Gwendolyn Bounds, who's here to share with us her new book, Not Too Late, The Power of Pushing Limits at Any Age. Do you feel that your life has come to a standstill and you're seeking something more? Well, today's guest is going to share with us how to do just that. So Gwendolyn Bounds is an award-winning journalist and author whose career spans influential media brands, including The Wall Street Journal, ABC News, Consumer Reports, CNBC, SmartNews, and many more. Her first book, Little Chapel on the River, earned wide acclaim for its poignant portrayal of life inside a small-town pub after the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001. So welcome to the show, Gwendolyn Bounds.
So glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Marianne.
Oh my goodness, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. I I could not put this book down when I first started reading it. What a great read. What inspired you to write this book?
Well, first of all, thank you for that. The not putting a book down is always the greatest compliment you can have after you spend years alone in a room, churning out words and then bring it into the world. The book, for people who have not read it, the book is essentially it's both the story of my own evolution from a middle-aged, unathletic journalist glued to her screens into a competitive athlete in the daunting sport of obstacle course racing, which you and I can get into more in a moment. But more important, I think, for anybody out there, it's also a guide filled with tactics and tools to help others embark on their own journey to push limits in midlife or at any age in whatever pastime excites them. And for me, the catalyst to write this book really began at a dinner party of all places, right before my 45th birthday, and I'm 52 now. And I overheard an older man ask a young girl what she wanted to be when she grew up. Normal question. The little girl started rattling off all these amazing things. Maybe I'll be a coder at Apple, or maybe I'll be a veterinarian, or I'm a really good artist. And I think the man was eventually sorry he asked because she had so many things that she rattled off. But that question stuck with me and hit me hard, Marianne, because I realized in the moment that, when you reach midlife, nobody's asking you, what do you want to be anymore? And I think even more importantly, we stop asking ourselves. And that was the catalyst the next morning that set me off on this journey where I woke up kind of just really not, I was still kind of angst ridden from this conversation. It was stuck in my brain. And I Googled without really knowing why I was Googling this, what are the hardest things you can do? And this Spartan racing, which is a type of obstacle course racing, popped up as one of the hardest physical challenges you can do. And I clicked on it. And that is really how the journey began. And then that is how, and the journey led to the book eventually.
All I have to say is thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I kind of think back of, okay, so folks I knew, relatives, when they were 50, they were done with life. It was like, okay, I'm done. I'm over. We're just beginning life at that age. So I'm so excited that this book really is inviting us to push our own limits. And my goodness, I mean, how was it getting into, you look at the Spartan course and you're checking this out. I mean, didn't that take a while for you to go ahead and start to pursue and get to the level of where you can compete?
It did. And I'll talk about that in a minute. I just want to underline something you said a moment ago about this notion that when we reach sort of the midway point, if we're lucky enough to even get there, we don't actually know what our midway point is going to be. But when we reach this state of middle age, the natural tendency for so long has been, right, you're turning toward endings. And you think who and what you are, that you are fully baked as a human, that you know what you're good at, and more importantly, what you're not good at. And so you just lean into those competencies and shy away from things that are hard, but that might have, piqued your interest. So I love that you brought that up. And in the case of Spartan racing for me and how long it took, I should really tell everybody that I was not an athlete. And in fact, I was the skinny, gangly kid growing up who was last pick for sports teams. I spent a lot of time warming the bench. I was born 1 year before Title IX was passed in the United States, which gave women the equal footing in sports. But, nothing really ever clicked for me on the ball fields, right? I was, again, just kind of a messy jumble of angles, right? A scrawny kid. And so I followed what I was good at, which was words, and that was my career. But at 45, when I had this wake up call, I think I instinctively had always wanted something I knew competitive sports and athletics could bring me, but I just had never pursued it because it didn't come naturally or easily. It wasn't one of my competencies. And it really took about 18 months before I got to my first race. And that's because life is life. And I had inertia in my own world. I had all of the middle age responsibilities so many of us have to cope with. And we all have different ones, but some will be familiar to people. I have aging parents. I have family. I had a big job that I was responsible for. And so breaking that inertia was really important. But eventually I did. And I started fumbling around in my own yard and property, trying to learn some of the maneuvers that you would need for obstacle course racing, which is a sport that requires endurance running, like cross country running, with obstacles such as scaling walls or climbing a 17-foot rope, carrying heavy sandbags and crawling under barbed wire. Nothing I had ever thought I could do. But I started really just signed up for these free workouts for the day from a company called Spartan Race, which puts on obstacle course racing. And little by little, just doing those little workouts of the day and Googling things again and watching maneuvers on YouTube, it started to make me feel like this was a part of who I could be. And that was enough to get me to the starting line of my first race in 2018.
I guess you can drop the mic after that, right?
I don't know about that. I dropped from a 17-foot rope. That's what happened is I was, it was not like I ran and suddenly it occurred to my body or anybody else that I was going to be some great racer. I mean, I was, I finished really middle last of the pack and I failed a bunch of obstacles. And as I just alluded to, I was trying to climb this 17-foot rope and I got about 10 feet up and my grip strength wasn't long enough and I fell and I lay there and, felt tears kind of come to my eyes and thought like I could just walk out of here and quit and nobody would ever know. But, I would have known. I would have woken up the next day in my own body and I would have had to hold myself accountable for that. And thankfully I didn't because now it's, 2024 and I'm about to run my 52nd race in Utah next week. And it has been quite a profound journey from that day to this one.
What do you think has been your biggest, and we talked about some physical hurdles, but how about your mental hurdles?
The mental hurdles, I think, are the same for anybody, or at least very similar for anyone who is thinking about starting something new and challenging, but they haven't done it before. They don't know how they're going to find the time. They're afraid they're going to look foolish. They think they might be too old for it. The list goes on, right? We can pretty much talk ourselves out of anything if we let our brains just kind of do what they naturally will do. And as I said, the first thing for me was in many ways getting over the fear of thinking I am not an athlete, right? I had to switch to this mindset of not yet, and that's something the very well-known psychologist Carol Dweck talks about the power of adding the word "yet" to the end of something. I'm not an artist yet. I'm not an athlete yet. I'm not a pickleball player yet, right? You get the picture. And so believing that was a first way to get me out of this sort of cycle of sameness, right? The same work routines, the same friends, the same conversations, the same house chores, same restaurants, right? That's part of, I think, what hits us in midlife, that we have crafted these carefully constructed worlds of things that we have chosen, but then there's a repetition to it and we're not pushing ourselves to embrace firsts and try new things. So really getting myself out of that rut and believing that I could still add to the narrative of who I am was a big hurdle in the beginning. And the other one was frankly more practical, Marianne. It was time, right? If you're already feeling like you are living in days that are very full, how do you begin to carve out time for something new? And some of the decisions that I made were big ones and some of them were small ones. On the big ones, I really began to think like, what is my crop? And when I say crop, I say that because I was driving on a road in North Carolina, where I'm originally from. I was down near the coast, near some farmland, and I had pulled over to check a text message from work, and I saw a farmer in the field, and he was on his tractor, one hand on the wheel and just staring straight ahead. And he wasn't checking his phone. And I don't, as far as I know, he wasn't doing anything but just really tending to his crop. And it occurred to me if he doesn't focus on what he's doing, then his crop dies. And I went home and I wrote that in a notebook that night. And I really began to think about what is my crop? What is it in life that is essential to me? And so I pared back things that were not essential, right? The essential things were my family and my health, my job, and then I was going to add obstacle course racing to that. But so what did I not do in that case? Well, watching Netflix for an hour at night was not essential. There were a lot of social obligations and things I were doing that might have been fun in the moment, but they weren't essential. And I started to wean those things back. It was very hard at first, but those all gave me back some big chunks of time that I was able to turn into, a path to train and a path to get better and a path to know what it's like to embark on a road of trying to master something, even though I'll never reach the level of expert, right? I probably don't have the time, but that doesn't matter because just waking up every day and having something new to embrace and having made the time for it, that is powerful in itself.
I was shocked when I was reading your book and it talked about how 42% of Americans, are in this state of obesity. So when we look at that, just how we can make these changes. And I love how your book gives us a roadmap to do that.
One of the things that was the most surprising to me when I set out to talk to experts to provide really this structure around my own story that would have science and research and tips and tactics and tools for other people to use. One of the things that surprised me the most was when I spoke with one of the country's leading authorities on aging. He's a man named Stephen Ostad. And he pointed out to me that for so long we have believed that you have to start a movement or exercise program when you're young for it to really make a difference. And he said that the entire sort of the entire theory behind this has changed in the scientific community, and that truly you can get these powerful benefits starting even in midlife and well beyond. And some of the research I looked at showed how frail elderly people were able to put on almost 3 pounds of lean mass, which includes muscle, simply by being put on a strength training program for 6 months along with a protein supplement. And I really, I mean, that's an extraordinary amount of muscle to put on, especially if you're frail and elderly. And so for anyone who's even a bit younger than that, that gives a lot of hope to me. And it's not about being necessarily a competitive obstacle course racer, a competitive athlete. Sports doesn't even have to be the thing that you love, but I do think we all need to be what I call fit for life, which is healthy and mobile and strong enough to engage in the things that we love with the people that we love for as long as we can. And that does require movement on a daily basis. It consistent movement and building of strength in our respiratory fitness. And just to underscore this again, it is not too late. I'll go back to the title of the book to begin these programs. It was not too late for me. And it's, probably not too late for most of the people out there who are listening to this.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Gwendolyn Bounds in regards to her new book, Not Too Late: The Power of Pushing Limits at Any Age. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Are you an author, speaker, or expert who is looking for more publicity? Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up for free interview requests from shows looking for guests. Radio Guest List is the #1 free booking resource for radio, podcasts, and TV talk shows who are looking for experts like you right now. Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up today to get the visibility you deserve.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special. When you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest Gwendolyn Bounds, who's here sharing with us her new book, Not Too Late: The Power of Pushing Limits at Any Age. Do you think sometimes that people just get caught up in their identities of the work they're doing or who they are to really look at being able to make changes in their lives?
I was caught up in my identity. I mean, my identity was I am a journalist. I am, a daughter, a spouse, a friend, but there was nowhere in the descriptors that people who loved me or knew me, there nowhere was athlete or strong ever going to be in those descriptors until I made this change. And I do think it's quite easy to just pursue our competencies. We fall into a competency trap where we again just lean into those things that we're comfortable doing. This gets, I think, more acute as we reach middle age and we become sort of settled in this identity. And breaking out of that requires being okay looking foolish, right? And, when I say that, I don't mean that in a way that, people sort of recoil at the word foolish, but it's actually kind of a wonderful and freeing thing to be able to just give up this notion that, oh, I have to look so perfect and all my social media pictures have to look so perfect. And as I'm aging, I need to be dignified, right? I don't, these are very constricting ideas. And I think they're harmful in a lot of ways. And for me, some of the most freeing moments I had was I would go to a playground and I had to learn how to swing across monkey bars because that's one of the obstacles on an obstacle course. And I hadn't swung on monkey bars since I was a kid. And you're definitely not as limber and the motion doesn't come as naturally when you're 45 as it did when you were 5. But I would have these little kids out there giving me instructions and, lady, you're doing it all wrong. You need to do this and that. And their parents were watching. And once I got over the oh my gosh, I wonder what their parents think. And I listened to these kids, they taught me, little kids taught me how to swing on monkey bars. And, going from falling off to being able to do that again, not only was freeing, but it's so fun when you go to these races and you see adults ranging from their 20s up into their 60s swinging across monkey bars and completing them. The cries of joy, it's so inspiring. And, I had to learn to throw a spear. That's another obstacle. And I I impaled so many trees and other things trying to learn how to do this. And that was great. And so I think we just got to let go of this notion of looking, like we're really good and feeling like we're the best all the time, and let ourselves dig into something where we're going back and starting from square one and learning.
I love that. I think that dovetails nicely with, I know you talk about the art of learning, unlearning, and relearning. Is that what you're referring to here?
It is, and all of them, all of those words, they're similar in some ways, but they mean slightly different things. And for instance, monkey bars, I had to relearn. At one point, my body knew how to do that, and I had to teach it how to remember how to do that. On the other hand, like I thought I knew how to run, but it turns out my foot placement was not optimal, and my cadence was off, and it would my hips would hurt from it, and so I had to invest in unlearning how to run, and then learn again how to run in the proper way, which wasn't easy, because I've been used to moving a certain way for decades. But that, I think there's real cognitive power in this neurologically, when you are forcing your brain to learn in a specific way, to basically not just practice in a repetitive way where you're doing things incorrectly, but where you're unlearning what you're doing wrong and then finding a new way to do it. Like there's real research that shows there's cognitive benefits for that. And the other part of it is, I mean, look, you know this as well as anybody, but chronic boredom has been well established as a health hazard, right? One that can lead to anxiety and depression and even the risk of making mistakes. And so as we age, adding something new that breaks up that cycle of sameness and gets us out of this competency trap is so important to ward off chronic boredom and to build into the will to live. And there's a very smart and well-known professor of epidemiology at Yale University named Becca Levy, and she talks a lot about this will to live. But the most important piece of research she's known for boils down to one number, which is 7.5. And what her research has shown is that people who have positive perceptions of aging live 7.5 years longer than those who do not. And inherent to that is this will to live. I don't know about you, but I would take 7.5 years. And I think, again, having a reason, a why that, of course, our families, of course, the people we love, of course, our communities and the things that we give back to and how we spend our time otherwise matter. But are we doing something for ourselves as well that really wake us up? And that is the call to action that I want to put out there for your listeners and for everybody, is to really know that there is, in most cases, still time to do that.
What are some practical tips for maintaining motivation and perseverance?
The first thing I would say is, don't try to boil the ocean in the beginning. You don't have to be completely well versed in something to just get out there and start fumbling around. As I said, a lot of my first 18 months really, was a lot of trial and error. Again, just trying these free workouts of the day and just doing something, was, even if it wasn't really structured yet with clear practice and clear teachers, just engaging in it began to make me feel like I was part of something. And I would go to work and I'd sit at a conference room table and I would feel these little baby calluses emerging under my hands. And it felt like this secret identity, right? As I was sitting here working through an 83-page PowerPoint presentation, right? It was really, it made the days feel like they were getting shaken up a bit. And so I think for everybody, don't feel like you have to have all the gear. Don't feel like you have to have all the answers. Just, figure out what's something little you can do to start engaging in something that you love. And I think also it's like, don't listen to other people if they tell you why, if they ask you, why are you doing that? I cannot tell you how many people, even people who are my closest friends, who would say things like, you're crazy, or I don't understand why you're doing this. You're going to get hurt. I mean, the list of like the things that people said to me, if I had listened to those, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I wouldn't have a book. I wouldn't have 52 races under my belt. I wouldn't, I wouldn't have this new identity, and I wouldn't be as happy or as healthy as I am. And so I encourage people to listen to their guts. And the other thing I'll say is that intrinsic motivation is really important, and that's different than extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is, again, I'm going back to your gut, something that excites you enough because and makes you motivated to do it, that you would do it even if there's no external reward, like a medal or money, or some extrinsic factor that can go away. Internal motivation is the thing that's going to get you, again, to turn off Netflix, to wake up earlier. Those memories of me being a scrawny little girl, kind of sitting on the bench and always feeling weak. I mean, that's what's gotten me through some of the hardest races I've ever been in, because no finisher medal was going to keep me up on a mountain in Lake Tahoe in freezing temperatures and snow after a cold water swim, where your body is just like rigid with cold. Like nothing except intrinsic motivation was going to get me through that. And so I think for people to think about, like, what do you love, what makes you want to learn, unlearn, relearn, those are really good places to start, Marianne.
Such great advice. And what key messages do you hope our readers and listeners take away from Not Too Late?
The first thing I hope is that, if people read the book, and if you do, thank you, and you feel excited by something, I hope you'll take some notes, because inertia is going to come for you. And you may put the book down and think, oh, I'm going to dive into X. And I think taking some notes about how you feel and what's exciting to you will make you be able, when inertia sets in, you can go back and read that, and it will remind you. I used to laugh at people who put sticky notes of things on their mirrors, but I have a sticky note on my mirror right now that says 10 pull-ups a day and, sweat in the heat for 4 times a week, because I'm getting ready to head to Utah for a race. So if a sticky note works for you, I've come around on the sticky note front. I also think start looking at your time. I think if we all had a video camera that watched us throughout the day, and then we played our days back to us, we would generally be somewhat horrified at how much time we are wasting in little time sucks, right? The scrolling, oh, I need this on Amazon, I'll break and go do this. Oh, I think I'll go check out this sale on this thing, right? I think if we look at those little time slices and we can bucket them and only do certain the things like ordering products online on one day a week, those little time slices will add up, and they can become big chunks of time that you can dedicate to something new. And I think the last thing I would say, I just want to go back to this notion of being okay, not being great or the best, or not being good. I mean, I was the youngest. I was the oldest. That was wishful thinking on my part. I was the oldest person in many cases at my gym, trying to learn some of these maneuvers, and I had to stick with it, right? And even when I wasn't doing well, and I certainly didn't look good doing things, I slowly got better. And sticking with it through the parts that are uncomfortable. We're a country and a culture that likes to be comfortable. Being a bit uncomfortable, I think, is incredibly healthy.
I love that. I just love that. It really is inviting us to push our boundaries that keep us stuck and unhappy.
I agree. And I think people will be surprised, if they do stick with it, how they'll turn a corner, and that something you thought was so beyond the realm of what you ever might be can suddenly be part of the story of who you are. And it's not always about reinvention, it's about evolution. I haven't left behind any of the things that I was, but I've evolved and I've added something. And so, how do you add to the story of who you are?
What have you learned about yourself as you've been doing these obstacle courses?
I've learned I've learned that I've learned to embrace the things where I am weak, in some ways. So I'll give you a very specific example. Starting lines of races, everybody kind of goes out really fast and hot because you don't want to be that person in front of the crowd who's like the back of the pack, and you immediately start to feel bad. But I'm just not fast at the start. And if I try and if I try to go with my natural personality, I'm a Virgo, I'm going to push, I'm going to go hard, I am inevitably going to blow up in my race. And so I have had to learn to hang back and be at the back of the pack and just settle with that, because I know I'm a strong finisher, that as it goes on, I have grit and I can gut it out. And I will usually, if I can stick through it to that end point, I'm going to do better. And so having to overcome that has been something I have learned about myself, the patience to do that. I have had to really find a new patience with myself and to not rely on what I might do as a journalist, or the attributes I might fall back on as a journalist. They might be different attributes I need to fall back on when I am racing. And I want to double click on that word, attributes, because attributes, as I know you know, Marianne, are very different than skills. Skills being something like I am fast and I am strong, but attributes are things that we all have kind of running like computer code in the background of who we are. Do we have determination or grit or humor or patience? And so I have learned to find what attributes I have that will make me a better racer. And I've had to dial into those to be able to be successful. And I've also had to embrace fear. Fear, sometimes the obstacles are scary, but all the fears that we face about not being good enough, about failure. I think, again, I'm a type A personality. I've had, been fortunate enough to have real success in my career, but I don't always have success on the race course. And, having fear about that is something I've had to reconcile. I had, television crew come out and film me in a race for some media for the book, and having a camera follow me while I was doing a race. I mean, it was, my guts were churning during the whole thing, despite how many races I've done. And despite the fact that I've been on television, like the performance aspect of that, I still had to fight I don't want to look dumb on TV, falling off a rope or monkey bars. So the humility of it, and the knowing that, a race could go great or it could not go great. And I have to live with that. That's been incredibly profound for me.
Well, you are such an inspiration. I'm so glad that we've been able to spend this time together. Where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your book, Not Too Late, and be part of your community?
You can go to my website, which is my full name, GwendolynBounds.com. You can find all my social handles there, and connect with me. There's a way to email me off of that website. And for anybody who's been listening to this and thinks, oh, obstacle racing sounds kind of interesting. Again, you don't have to race in competitive heats. You can race in open heats where you can skip obstacles, and you can race with your friends and with teams. It's a lot of fun. It's just a lot lower. It's a lot more low key. And they're thinking, oh, I want to try that. For anybody who orders a copy of the book right now, you can get a code to race for free. And the races are pretty pricey, so it's a pretty good deal. So if you're thinking you're interested and want to try your hand at that, the details for that are on my website right now as well.
Well, Gwendolyn, it has been such an honor to spend this time with you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you. And thanks for what you do, Marianne. And thanks for all the great messages you put into the world.
Well, thank you, Gwendolyn. You are such an inspiration, and I really enjoyed our discussion today. Make sure to visit Gwendolyn's website at gwendolynbounds.com, be part of her community, and learn more about her work. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.